My Pro Tour Kaladesh deck competing in Hawaii is Blue Red Splash White Dynavolt Flash Torrential Gearhulk Flash. I love this deck. I'm so happy to be playing this deck. And in this video, we're going to talk about Pro Tour testing. We're going to talk about how the deck works, if it makes sense for you, why I'm playing it, and you'll get to see my results before I do. I'm recording this on Sunday in Arcata, California. I'm headed to Honolulu, Hawaii on Tuesday, meeting up with some guys, test, trying to get more people onto the deck. So hopefully you see it in the top 8, not even in my hands. This is a commitment for me. I know there's time, but I'm not going to change because the results are too good. I have the deck in paper right here. I have almost a second copy of it, and I have it online. I bought in. We'll talk about the theory, but I love to front load with science. We have testing has gone well, but we have tournament results from guys in the mastermind who've been playing with this. We have a 4-0 paper tournament, a 3-1 paper tournament, a 3-1 paper tournament, a 3-1 paper tournament, and a 4-1 Magic Online League. Those are the results of our non-pro players playing this deck. That is good enough for me, and the testing is good enough for me. And we'll start by talking about the theory. We'll do a deck tech, and then we'll talk about implications of the metagame. So first off, the theory. I want to play control. I just want to play control. I'm going to the Pro Tour. I want decisions. I want long games versus other pros. I want memorable games. I didn't want to play aggro for that reason. So what is important for control in this format? Well, now that we know the threats, the early game threats, we know that speed is a big factor. So a viable control deck is going to be able to interact in the first 3 turns of the game consistently, and it can come back later, but it's okay if lands come into play tapped later. Not in the first 3 turns, because we need to shoot down Copter, counter it, shoot down the crew, and then we can stabilize and grind out later. So that's why we have this mana base. What led me to this is Spire Bluff Canal, actually, and Wandering Fumarole, Needle Spires, those are good lands. They do come into play tapped, but we're not messing around with the buddy lands. Our lands come into play untapped to cast Galvanic Bombardment to take out the crew, Harness Lightning, take out the Copter. Negate, wow, 4 of, you're crazy, bro. Well, guess what? Even the aggro decks play tons of non-creature spells, counters Smuggler's Copter, counters Unlicensed Disintegration, counters Fleet Wheel Cruiser, counters Sky Sovereign, counters Gideon, counters Always Watching, counters Fiery Temper, counters Deck and Stone, counters, and on and on and on. And that's just the aggro decks. Obviously, it's very good against the control and combo deck, so it seems like an easy 4 of here. 4 pack of negates with Void Shatters, the exile counter spell to shut down Graveyard Fuel for Scrap Heap Scrounger, and 4 Big Daddy Snapcaster Torrential Gearhulk to take over on 6 mana. So we have our burn, we have Anticipate and Glimmer of Genius, which let us pull ahead in the late game, and play a low variance deck where we're not that likely to get flooded or screwed, especially with the Fumaroles as well. So then our Gearhulks, which flash in at the end of the turn, we have no creatures before turn 6, and sorcery speed removal can't even touch it. So anyone playing creature removal is going to have that really nerfed against us. That's great. We're going to get free wins because people are clogged with removal. Gearhulk comes into play on turn 6, can be a counter spell if you need to stabilize, a removal spell if you need to blow them out in combat, or a card draw spell to pull further ahead. We also have Radiant Flames to sweep. If we're going to play Radiant Flames, this might switch to Kozilek's Return. We've talked about it because it's an instant, but the 3 damage seems really crucial. If we're going to do 3 damage, untapped red-white lands make sense. Needle Spires make sense. Aether Hub makes sense with the energy. And from there we can splash into Nahiri, which is super, super awesome in this deck. It ties everything together. It is fixing, lets us discard our useless burn spells in control matchups game 1. It exiles a tapped Copter, it exiles a Scrap Heap Scrounger, an Amalgam. It can exile a Colossus or an Emrakul, not really ideal. It can exile Verdurous Gearhulk. It can exile a Fevered Visions, an Always Watching, and an Aetherworks Marvel. And it starts in on 6 if we tick up, then to 8. Then we can get a Gearhulk, hit them, Glimmer of Genius, pick up Gearhulk back to our hand. Crazy. And the deck turns the corner fast. With end of turn Gearhulk, untap, wake up Fumarole or Spires, hit you for 9, you're at 11. Oh, maybe I have Dynavolt Tower too. Yeah, this card is really good. If you can take out the early threat and play a Dynavolt Tower at 20, Every spell you play for the rest of the game does on average between 1 and 2 damage, and the Harness Lightnings and Glimmer of Genius and Aether Hub add to that. It lets you take over, it lets you pressure the face, it lets you attack Planeswalkers, it lets you do more things with less mana. So Flash decks, you want to play a Gearhulk and a Negate and use Dynavolt Tower in the same turn. Gives you massive mana advantage. So that's the main deck. I really like it versus anything Mardu color wheel, red-white, black-red. They just don't have enough threats, and they're left with burn spells and counter spells if you're out of reach. It seems favorable. I like it. I still like it versus the green-white and green-black aggro decks. They go bigger, but we have Void Shatter to counter the big stuff. Dynavolt Tower with Harness Lightning to take down Gearhulks. It's a little bit harder, green-red energy as well, but it's a metagame call. I expect 30%, 20 to 30% Mardu color stuff, and that's pretty favorable. It is also very good in control mirrors, which we'll talk about in a moment. The matchup I really do not like is the prized amalgam decks. So if I didn't do well, if this deck didn't do well, it's because there was tons of amalgam decks. We're still kind of reading the metagame on that, but I'm just going to gamble. I've committed. It saves me from having to think about it. The reason amalgam decks are hard, and they're beatable, but they're hard. If they don't draw an amalgam, it's actually very easy. If they draw 2 amalgams, it's so hard because they come back end of turn. It's really hard to grind through them. They pressure the life so much. Dynavolt Tower can match an amalgam, and a Weaver of Lightning out of the sideboard can match another amalgam, so it's possible to win. But it's really hard when they're that recursive and they're working towards Elder Deep Fiend and stuff like that. So note on the mana base, we have like 18 blue, 17 red, 9 white in the main. I'm going to go to 26 lands and planes in certain decks. Let's talk about the sideboard matchups. So so basically we have 10 removal spells in the main. Bombardment, Lightning, Radiant Flames. We're going to want to cut up to all of them against the creatureless decks, say Tamer, Aetherworks, Marvel. So we want 10 spells to come in. 2 Rattle Chains, 2 Dispel, 4 Spellcores, Summary Dismissal, and a land can come in that case. And this is just fucking crazy. It is. Like, we had Fevered Visions, but they can untap Slam a Marvel, Slam a Tamiyo, Slam a Gideon, whatever, those decks, Slam a Dovin. But if you just throw out a Rattle Chains at the end of their second turn and they've cut all their removal, wow. There was a game yesterday at the local shop. Pete played, sided in the 1 Rattle Chains. There's 2 now. Untapped, drew it. Turn 2, and it did 12 damage. There's another game where Pete went up to hit 3 Spellquellers versus Black-White, Spellquellered. Sorin came down to kill a Spellqueller. Rattlechains came down to protect Spellqueller and attack the Sorin off the table. So Rattlechain's super synergistic with Spellqueller and lets us pressure and be a lot faster against decks that are ticking towards Emrakul. And we have Summary Dismissal to deal with that as well. And this is just crazy, crazy easy mode cheat code against the other control decks if they're pulling out all the removal. These just counter, like we'll have 4 Spell Quellers for counters, 2 Dispel, 1 Summary Dismissal, 4 Negate, 4 Void Shatter, 4 Torrential Gearhulk, that's 8, 12, 16, 17, 18, 19 counter spells, and 2 Rattle Chains to protect for early pressure. Easy mode. On a similar vein, I like Weaver of Lightning a lot because a lot of these decks will be taking out their removal for discard and stuff like that. I'm not sure if the Weaver is even necessary because the small aggro decks are quite good, but it's pretty nasty. If you can play a Weaver, it blocks Copter, it blocks Scrounger, it blocks Amalgam, it pings Spirit tokens, it pings Servo tokens, it pings Thopters. It's just really, really good, and showing no creatures game 1 until turn 6 or later makes that a lot better. Options, could play Deck and Stone. I tried it, didn't like it that much because you don't really want to give them a bunch of extra cards. You could play Descend Upon the Sinful, but double white. I don't want to play double white Linvala, stuff like that. You could play Fevered Visions, but it works poorly with Spellqueller because Spellqueller works best when the opponent has few cards in hand. When both players have few cards. Spellqueller doesn't work great with Fevered Visions because they have more cards just to point the removal at the Spellqueller. You could play a version with Fevered Visions. Tried it, didn't like it. Now, inevitably, there will be some changes in the week before the Pro Tour. This is my general strategy. I highly recommend it in any metagame that has under 20% amalgam decks, which I expect the metagame to be. Like, even if there's 20% amalgams, then I would be like, maybe there's a way to fix it. I don't really want to go black because we don't want tapped lands in the early turns. For Kaladesh, that would be a solution. But if your local meta is just all amalgam, again, it's not unwinnable. It's just a bad matchup. But that's fine with me at the Pro Tour because there's 10 rounds. If I get paired against amalgam once, I'll be happy. Twice will be kind of awkward. 3 or more times will be like, well, that was either a bad metagame read or I got unlucky in pairings. Like 30% amalgam decks seems unlikely. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see how I do. Hopefully, we'll see how other people do who play the deck. I've shared it with about 14 players who are playing, plus anyone they've leaked it to, so maybe a lot of people know about it. I think it'll make a great Grand Prix deck and PTQ deck afterwards. Really fun as well, and the sideboard plan is just crazy and hard to even play around. So hope you found that interesting and useful. If you want to know how to build hot, crazy, spicy decks, then I recommend following the links below. We have the free workshop, we have the ebook, and I'm not really, I'll be accepting some mastermind applicants while I'm in Hawaii, so you can follow that link as well. But I hope you enjoy this deck. If you pick it up in the season, come back, leave me comments, let me know how it goes, and I hope you have an amazing, amazing time. Much love, Trav out.